Jeannie's estate. Short episodes written by J.W.T. Episode 1. The beginning of the end. The manor was the first thing Willie saw. It stood at the end of the long, muddy drive, wounded and silent beneath a sky the color of ash. Once, the house had been one of the grand pieces of the Thomas estate, a place with columns, high windows, old brick, and the kind of presence that made people slow down when they passed it. Now, it looked as if the world had reached down and broken it open. The tornado had taken the roof first. Great sections of timber had been ripped away and scattered across the grounds. Windows hung shattered in their frames. Tree limbs lay twisted across the lawn, and pieces of the old house were strewn through the wet grass like bones after a battlefield. Near the drive, a for sale sign leaned crooked in the dirt. That sign said almost everything. The manor had been on the market. It had value. It had history. It had belonged to the estate of Jeannie Thomas, a woman whose family name carried more than a century of money, business, and local power behind it. And yet, when the storm came, the property had not been insured. Willie stood in front of the wreckage with Scott Thomas beside him. Neither man spoke at first. There are moments when words seem too small for what a person is looking at. This was one of those moments. The house was not merely damaged. It was a warning. It was proof that something old and powerful had been left unprotected. Scott stared at the collapsed roofline, his face hard and unreadable. He had the manner of a man who understood trouble before it fully arrived. Willie, younger and quieter, looked at the manor with grief rising beneath his anger. This was not just a house. This was Jeannie's estate. This was family history. This was part of the legacy built by the Thomases over generations, beginning with gas stations in the early days of automobiles, growing into convenience stores, land, money, and a name that once meant something. Now the estate was moving toward liquidation, and one of its proudest properties had been ruined. Wade Thomas had been the sole executor. Wade had been responsible, and Wade had not kept insurance on the property. Finally, Willie spoke. He let this happen. Scott did not answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the manor. Then he said, he knew it was up for sale. He knew it needed to be protected. The wind moved through the broken trees. Somewhere inside the house, loose boards creaked and shifted. Willie looked toward the shattered windows, then down at the muddy ground. This place stood for over 100 years, he said. Businesses, land, family, all of it. And now look. Scott's jaw tightened. This didn't start with the tornado. Before Willie could answer, a deep sound came from inside the manor. At first, it was only a groan, low, wooden, and tired, like the house itself had finally run out of strength. Both men looked up. The remaining section of the roof trembled. Then came the crack. It split through the air like a gunshot. A beam gave way, then another. The roof folded inward, collapsing into the heart of the house. For one terrible second, the front of the manor seemed to hold its breath. Then the entire second floor caved in. The collapse thundered through the estate grounds. Dust and splintered wood burst from the windows. The old walls shook. What remained of the upper rooms disappeared into a cloud of grey debris, and the grand house that had once stood proud before generations of Thomases sank deeper into ruin. Willie stepped back instinctively. Scott did not move. He just watched as the dust rolled out through the broken windows and drifted across the lawn. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. There was nothing to say. The house had answered for itself. Willie stared at the wreckage, his voice low when he finally spoke. There it goes. Scott's face hardened. No, he said. There it went a long time ago. The dust continued to fall like ash. Willie knew he was right. The storm had destroyed the house, but it had not created the damage. The real destruction had begun long before, in quiet resentments, family jealousy, court papers, accusations, and the slow unraveling of trust. It began in Jeannie's final years. It began with who cared for her, who stayed away, who wanted control, and who believed the estate belonged to them. It began with Walt Thomas Sr., who had spent the last 13 years of Jeannie's life caring for his mother and doing what he believed a son was supposed to do. It began with Louise, standing beside him. It began with Wade and Drusinda, with bitterness that had been growing for years. And now, standing before the ruined manor, Willie and Scott were looking at more than storm damage. They were looking at the result of a family war. The manor had fallen, but the story of how it fell had only begun.